We are at Black Hat day 2 of 2019 in our series of interviews with folks. I'd like to welcome Carolyn Crandall, who has arguably the coolest title of everyone we've interviewed at this conference so far. She is the Chief Deception Officer for Attivo Networks. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
It's nice to have you here. Now, I've done some work in marketing when I worked at Tenable and such, and I really like your marketing campaign and messaging with the wolf in sheep's clothing. It fits deception. It stands out. So if you want to start just by, like how you came up with it, what's the meaning behind it, and things like that, I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, sure. We were thinking we're a deception technology company, and essentially we are the wolf hiding in the sheep of a flock of sheep. And so we thought, well, everybody loves plush toys at the events. We thought, well, this was a great way to draw a parallel to what we're doing and help people understand the value of being able to kind of hide in plain sight and be able to detect and derail the criminals, the bad guys.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now, have you made product announcements here or enhancements or kind of update us on the suite of Attivo products and features?
Sure, absolutely. It's, if you look at the two things with deception technology, it's being able to really cover the attack surfaces and also be believable, right? So if I don't look like I blend in, I'm going to be avoided. And so as we have looked at our portfolio, and we cover everything from on-premises to cloud and remote locations, industrial control, IoT, all these specialized environments, we started to think about it, and what we've created is a deception fabric. And so you interweave the decoys and the lures throughout the network, but some people will go, well, okay, but you have to trip across it or you have to be lured in. And so our engineers really thought about this and said, well, what if we turn the entire endpoint into a decoy? Right? So there's basically no way for an attacker to be able to easily move off this endpoint. So if you think about what we had before is as the attacker looks to move laterally, is we had the things for reconnaissance, Active Directory reconnaissance, we had credential theft, man-in-the-middle attacks, and we said, well, what if they're looking for open ports, right? Things or services, and if we could redirect that attack and push them into the decoy environment, and do this both on the inbound and the outbound. And so that was one of the announcements that we put out. So basically, we're locking down the endpoints so that as they try to move laterally, they can't. The second part of the announcements was...
so sorry, on the first one, so do I deploy an agent to my endpoint
no
to that
agent.
deception? So you build into Active Directory those deceptions?
Yes, so we build into Active Directory. We've got scripts out on the endpoint, and then little secret sauces and things that we do. But the main thing is that there is no agent in our technology, and we understand, right? People don't want to put anything else more on the endpoint, but we've created, our engineers have created a really innovative way of being able to put these different pieces in on the endpoint and as they move through the network. And so it's working very efficiently and effectively. And
I love the approach. I think putting artifacts that are as believable as possible for an attacker, that when they start doing reconnaissance, which is the first thing that they do when they land on an endpoint, to steer them into the deception technology is just a great approach. I find it's, when I talk to folks who are trying to secure Active Directory, it's a really, really challenging problem to solve. And I believe you need technology like this to fill in all those gaps where someone's on an endpoint and they were just super, super sneaky. But I think the deception can trick them and ultimately lead to them being detected in the network.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of the step one. Let's detect that they're there. And then the step two is being able to build very specific threat intelligence for that individual company, right? We have all these threat intelligence databases, which are useful, but what if I can tell you the specifics of what is an attacker after in your network? How are they moving through the networks, their tools, their techniques, their methods that they're using? And so the neat thing about this is as we're able to redirect the attackers into the decoy environment, then they're continuing to believe that they're playing out their attack. And so we can pick up all the TTPs and IOCs. We can even plant decoy docs to get counterintelligence on things. And it really helps not only getting to root cause analysis, but also now you really know what were they after. And then you can look at your architecture and say, well, what are the attack paths of how they would get there? Maybe you want to shut them down. Maybe you want to reinforce by putting more deceptions around it to make it that much harder for the attacker to be able to advance what they're doing. And so it is one of the things that makes Attivo very unique compared to other detection companies is that it doesn't stop, right? You really get that adversary intelligence of
Yeah.
what they're
What
up
I like
to.
about that too is I can do a threat hunt based on that. I can say, well, this attacker came in through this decoy and did X, Y, and Z. Let me go see what that looks like in the rest of my network and see if I find anyone else that tried the same thing, right?
Right, absolutely, and that's the beautiful part of it. So we have over 30 native integrations with pretty much the other tools that you have inside your network. And so if you want to automate rules inside of it, you can say, okay, I want to, in this case, automatically block or isolate or even threat hunt. And so it really reduces what we've been told is hours of investigative work down to minutes, and in some cases even be able to go to full automation. So it patterns like a ransomware attack. I don't want to mess around, right? I just want to block
stop it.
right? Stop it, and then I'll go and do maybe more investigation. But what the defender is getting is the element of time, right?
Yes.
Which can be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely. And what I also love about it is I find it very difficult to, in some of the more advanced attackers, they're really emulating user behavior. And I mean, there's a lot of tools out there, and they do a great job. But still, at the end of the day, finding those variances between this user or this set of credentials normally does this, but in this day, they did something slightly different. If you've got 100,000 users, that's a really difficult problem to solve. But deception doesn't really have that challenge, right? Because the attacker's the attacker, and if you can deceive them, then you can discover them.
Yeah, it's pretty black and white because if you think about it, a deception environment has no employee production value, right? So there's no reason for you to be, doing reconnaissance on our system. There's no reason for you to be using deceptive credentials to log into even something you believe is actually, production applications and other things. So it's the piece that I find not only for the external adversary, but really the use case of insider threats. Is that with deception, it's black and white, right? If you touch this or you engage, you are doing something that you shouldn't be. So maybe it's a policy violation versus full malicious activity.
Sure.
But you want to know, well, why were you in the research databases of the company? Why were you in the financial payroll piece of it? And granted, sometimes people are just curious. I want to know what my peer is making.
Right.
I was just...
Or I clicked on the wrong folder by mistake or whatever it was, right? That stuff happens.
And there's excuses, right? But if you're engaging with a decoy document or you're in a part of the deception network that you obviously shouldn't be, then it's very clear. But what becomes a really interesting debate on this is, do you tell your employees and have a zero tolerance policy, or do you not tell your employees so that you can track what they're up to and again, their motives and is it a ring of people that are all involved in this together? So it's very interesting. It's one of our top use cases as a company is being able to very accurately and efficiently detect insider threats.
Right. Yeah, and I like the holistic approach because it sounds like in doing multiple briefings with you, that I think a lot of people think, well, it's a honeypot. No, it's not a honeypot. And it's not even really a system, but it's also not just honey tokens. It's everything in between, right? So you can really emulate all kinds of artifacts, systems, applications, files, whatever it is, right? And I think that's really important to understand that you're creating this fabric, like you mentioned, a fabric of deception that I think really can help organizations fill in those gaps in their security program.
Yeah, and the wonderful part of it is it is a fabric, and a lot of people will think, oh my gosh, that sounds really complicated, right? Am I going to have very sophisticated personnel? Is it going to take a lot of time to operate this? But the way that it's done with machine learning is that it auto-learns the network, it prepares the deceptions for you, it auto-deploys it, and it makes it push-button simple. And so we have very large networks that people put out, and it's like, well, what was, in addition to us claiming, yes, it's better detection against better attackers, but what was kind of the tipping point? If because you got to believe somebody, it's like, well, yours is better than mine, is better than so-and-so's. But when it really came down to it, was the ease of use, right? It is so easy to set up, deploy, and manage, and then you get such a high-fidelity alert. You actually get a lot of additional benefits by deploying this over other tools, which you would still have a fairly detailed process in order to be able to respond to the attack. And so it is one of the things that's really driving the adoption of Attivo deception technology is that it's just easy, right? And it's accurate.
Now, when you're using the machine learning to create the deception artifacts, is it customizing it for my environment pretty much across the board?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's important, right? So everyone gets a slightly different deception based on your profile, so it looks believable, right? And I think that can be accomplished with machine learning.
It can, and it depends a little bit upon the deception technology that you're using. And so, and I advise people to look very carefully at the different deception platforms because they are not all created equal. But if I talk about what I know, which is Attivo's technology, is that because we use real operating systems, real applications, real services, plus you can upload any application, operating system, emulated system that you want into our environment. And so, for example, if I give you, we work with Bechdel Dickinson on medical device IoT. So drug infusion pumps are all over a hospital.
Yep.
We actually run their production image on our decoys. And so as an attacker, you can't tell the difference because there is no difference. And you even configure it to look exactly like what's there. Because if I'm running an SAP environment and all of a sudden I put in something that doesn't look like it, I'm going to go, that doesn't look like. If I'm on this medical device network that should have nothing but drug infusion pumps, but I have other software on there that doesn't look right, you're going to look at it and you're going, I'm just not going to touch that. But if there's really no difference and what might be attracting you is either a lure or there's a intentional misconfiguration on it that is what you're looking for to exploit, you're going to go touch it. And that's the only thing you need to do to trigger the alert is that actual engagement.
Right. It's creating a believable story.
Right. It's really believable. It's blending in. So some of it just slow down, stop, confuse the attacker, and the other ones is just really getting that full-fledged detection that's actionable.
Yeah, and I think that some of the misconceptions is, I just throw stuff out there, and it's like, no, there has to be like a story, and it has to be in a cohesive manner and be believable. And modern technology such as Attivo has accomplished that today. Yeah,
and you bring up another interesting point because a lot of people go, well, doesn't this create a dirty network, right? Am I going to put all these things out there? I'm going to have to patch and manage them. And because the way that this deception is deployed is the images are projected, or even in sometimes we're using forwarder technology, so there's really no dirtiness added to the network. You could literally, at the kind of a flip of a switch, like turn it up or turn it off. And so, there's some basic whitelisting you want to do. So, we don't interfere, they don't interfere. But once you've done that, it's very pure and very clean.
That's awesome. Any other announcements or things you wanted to mention? I know you also have a book as well.
So Joseph Salazar, one of my coworkers, and I finished this book, Deception-Based Threat Detection. So shifting power to the defender. So we're pretty excited to have that available out at our booth at Black Hat in case anybody wants to come by and pick it up. It's a great, mix of general overview, but also some really useful information on how it's being used in use cases and deployment scenarios. So,
and our audience loves that, by the way. That's the most popular question of our audience. Anytime we talk to a vendor, they're like, we want to hear about a use case or see a use case so they can read about them in the book, which is great.
They absolutely can. And one of the biggest challenges with deception, and I use this a lot, is it's like the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of deception is you don't talk about deception, right? So there are a lot of companies out there that are using the technology, but they just
don't want to talk. I don't blame them, right? Like, yeah.
And even if we say that, hey, look, the external adversary is going to fall for it, but they're still wanting to sometimes keep it secret, even from their own admins, because they want to be able to catch things that are happening that aren't. So totally respect, and we've had, even in our advisory board, some pretty animated debates about, zero tolerance, color outside lines, get in trouble, or no, I really want to be able to track them, see what they were trying to do, what they were after. And so either is okay, right? And then you can have your disciplinary actions already lined up, but it's flexible to go either way. It's just a very powerful use case, as are many other use cases externally. But again, people just like to keep it quiet what they're doing so that they can catch people's fingers in the cookie jar.
If folks want to try it out, is there a free trial or do you have to register for a demo? Either is fine. I'd just like our audience to know if they're interested how to engage.
Yeah, the easiest way, if they don't know who their rep is simply go to the website, hit request a demo or request information, and we can we can get you set up that. There's an open chat, other things. So that's the best way, because it's always good to understand the environment and the use case to make sure that, because this is such a rich platform, that people understand, well, not only can you get the detection capability, but you get a lot of visibility into things. So as we do the machine learning, we'll tell you where your exposed and orphaned credentials are, so you can shut down attack paths. We can give you some attack simulation tools to see how effective the tools are detecting the different types of attacks. And so by being able to have that conversation versus just, go download this from a website, we can actually help people understand the full benefit of the technology and then get the full value. And with that, we end up with very happy customers.
And plus, you don't want the attackers getting a hold of your technology either if it's out there, and I totally get that.
Well,
as well,
yeah,
right?
you know, and it's interesting. You probably know Chris Roberts too. He's our chief
Yeah.
security strategist and very well known. You know, so but he literally took this thing apart, not only from the software, but physically took everything. You know,
Yeah.
everything apart. You know, we have different versions, software and hardware, but so we feel very confident after he's dissected this thing. It's pretty pretty robust. But
That's awesome.
But still, yes, we'd like to keep it keep it in the defender's hands and out of others as much as we can. And that's why even in some cases too, the forwarder technology I mentioned is ways that you can get deception into environments that you couldn't otherwise. So for
Right.
example, we have companies that have facilities in China, right? So they don't want to put a physical box in there, and they can't.
I've heard logistically that could be very challenging. Yes.
It's very difficult. But if you just use a forwarder technology, you're not taking any data out, you're not putting anything in there, and so it creates a very again, another use case for being able to get very effective detection into environments that you may not be able to otherwise. So we have a lot of international customers that look at it for things like that, and data's cross borders, and then of course everybody's movement to the cloud. There's a lot of consideration to multi-cloud environments that maybe have detection to tools that work in Azure or AWS or vice versa, but this gives them the ability to have one central management system for multi-cloud environments, on-prem, industrial control networks. It's all just a way to get a view of everything that's going on very easily.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage our audience to visit the website and get a trial and a demo and check it out. So, Carolyn, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here.